bring in the Republican Senator Marco Rubio, joining us from his home state of Florida this morning to talk much more about this and many other topics. Senator, thank you so much for coming in.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Of
course. So you heard Jim Acosta reporting there. I want to get your take on the latest in these leaks that have been coming out over and over again. Allegations the U.S. has spied on the German chancellor on her cell phone. And now we've got this op-ed that the president's advisor saying that they're going to be reviewing U.S. surveillance programs. What's your take on this? Do you think the trust in the U.S. has been compromised?
Well, I think trust has been compromised for different reasons, not because of the spy program, but because of our conduct of foreign policy or lack thereof in terms of having a clear vision. You see reports this week that the Saudis, for example, are beginning to say they're going to go it alone in the Middle East. But that's a separate topic. Let me just say this on the NSA programs. Three things. Number one, an ongoing review of our intelligence gathering capabilities is the right approach because at the end of the day, you want to make sure your resources are being used where you need them the most. Number two, these leaders are responding to domestic pressures in their own country. None of them are truly shocked about any of this. They're aware of it because of my third point, and that is everyone spies on everybody. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, and whether they want to acknowledge that publicly or not, and every country has different capabilities, but at the end of the day, if you are a U.S. government official traveling abroad, you are aware that anything you have on your cell phone, on your iPad, could be monitored by foreign intelligence agencies, including that of your own allies. So I think a lot of what you're seeing from these European leaders is for the domestic consumption of their own public, but at the end of the day, everyone knew there was gambling going on in Casablanca. So
that's one way of putting it, that's for sure. I want to ask you about the rollout of Obamacare and the fiasco really surrounding it. You're pushing for a bill to delay the individual mandate until the website is fixed. The White House has so far given no indication that they're open to that. Why? That's really the core of this program. Have you heard back from the letter you sent to them?
No, we haven't, unfortunately, other than the statement by Mr. Carney at one of the press conferences saying that I was less than sincere about our effort. I don't understand that, because a week ago when we met with the president, he said that after all this government shutdown stuff passed, he would work with anybody to fix the things that were wrong in the law. Now, look, clearly I want to repeal Obamacare. I think it's a bad law for the country. I think it's the wrong way to do a right thing, and that's help people access health insurance. But right now, what I'm focused on is trying to save real people from real damage. And I just think it's unfair. It's fundamentally unfair to fine people, to tax people, to send the IRS after people for not buying health insurance when the website they're supposed to buy it on doesn't work. And that's all the law says. It says until that website is working, don't fine people. I don't understand how anybody could be against that.
Are you in conversations? Are you working with any of the Democrats who are pushing very similar or almost the same kind of proposal you are?
We are reaching out to offices across the aisle as well. We're trying to get as many people to support us. I don't see this as a partisan thing. I think we're going to continue to have a debate about the merits of Obamacare. All this says is we should not be penalizing anybody until this website is working, because that is the main way that we've told people they're going to be able to get health insurance. And I think that's something that at the end of the day is going to happen. And it's something that should unite us. It shouldn't be something that divides us from a partisan perspective.
I want you to answer to the criticism you alluded to. Democrats, they argue that your prescription for a fix here, and some by other Republicans, is just a thinly veiled attempt to try to derail this law. You know, and you said that you do not support it. How do you answer to them?
Well, again, they can say that, and there's no doubt that I would like to derail Obamacare, but that's not what this bill does. All this bill says is you can't penalize people until the website works. I mean, I don't understand how that is something that could possibly, how somebody could take a position against something like that. I mean, I think that makes all the sense in the world.
So following that 16-day government shutdown and the hit that Republicans took for their approach in terms of linking funding the government to defunding the health care law, do you now stand with your leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, who says there will be no more government shutdowns?
Well, again, I don't think the government shutdown was our choice, despite the way it's been presented to the American public. The fact of the matter is that me and my Republican colleagues and the House actually acted on this. We're prepared to fund the entire government, every single penny of it, including programs and elements of it we didn't agree with, as long as we didn't spend or waste a penny more on this broken health care law. It's the Democrats who decided to shut down the government, because their point was, unless we fund everything, including Obamacare, we fund nothing. Well, and they're the ones that shut down the government, so you have to ask them.
It sounds like it's a difference, obviously, not surprised, a difference in viewpoint, but you can't really have those two things together. I mean, Mitch McConnell acknowledged it was a faulty approach to try to take on Obamacare when you're looking at a government shutdown. So you don't think that was a faulty approach?
No, again, all I can tell you is that the House passed a bill that funded the government, but did not fund Obamacare. It sent it over to the Senate, and the Senate leadership, the Democrats, rejected it. Had they accepted that bill, there would not have been a government shutdown.
And
now,
you really
Obamacare
think there's any chance
money.
that the president would accept a bill that would defund a law that has his name on it?
Well, again, well, then we have a disagreement, right? Because on a significant policy issue, but that is the most important power that the Congress has, is the power to fund or not fund things. I mean, that's a constitutional power. It is the rightful power of Congress to decide what to spend their money on or what not to spend taxpayer money on. That's a legitimate exercise of congressional power.
So another big issue that you have been a big part of and really championed, I want to ask you about, immigration. Back in the conversation, many would say finally. What are the chances that you think a bill that could pass Congress and get to the president's desk by the end of the year?
Well, remember, the Senate has passed a bill. Now the House is discussing how to proceed, and I'm not sure how they're going to proceed, and I think they deserve the time and space to figure that out, and I think they're in the process of doing that, but I don't have any great detail about it because they're working that out internally. Beyond that point, though, I'd go back to something you just asked me a moment ago, and that is being realistic. You just asked me a moment ago, did we think it was realistic that the president would sign a bill that defunded his signature project? When some people say, of course, that's not realistic. Well, I also don't think it's realistic to believe that the House is just going to take up and pass whatever the Democrats in the Senate are demanding. And so I think that there are many things on immigration that we can agree on, and I think we should move on those and make progress on those issues. And there are a handful that we have no consensus on in this country yet, and those issues may have to be, delayed at some point until we can reach a consensus on how to approach them. But my point, I still want to solve immigration. I think it's an important issue for the country to deal with, but I don't think that we should not do anything because we can't do everything.
So a piecemeal approach you could be open for?
Well, that was my original position,
yeah.
And continues to be my preferred option, because I just think we're going to get a better result that way, and I think we're going to get a result that way. I think when you try to do anything big in Washington, it ends up running into headwinds. Now, that's the direction the Senate went. I wanted to influence that process, so I got involved in it. But I continue to believe that a series of sequential individual bills is the best way, the ideal way, to reform our immigration system.
In the end, whatever the final product would be, what do you think the chances are that it will include a pathway to citizenship? You know that's the bone of contention. Has anything changed?
Well, in order to solve this problem, you eventually have to confront that reality, that you have 11 million people living in this country who are here illegally, and most of them are going to be here for the rest of their lives. What we have today, in my opinion, is a de facto amnesty. The status quo is a de facto amnesty. So we have to address that issue in a realistic way. I think it gets easier to address that issue if we deal with some of the other issues first, and that's why I've always favored the sequential individual bills. I think if people have real confidence that the law is being enforced, that we're not going to have this problem again, that there's real border security, I think you buy yourself more space and more flexibility in finally dealing with those that are here illegally. But that's the toughest issue of all, as you've touched on.
It does move me to think that while this has been something people have been talking about and debating for more than a decade now, it sounds like there isn't a near-term solution in the works, though.
Well, again, everybody's in favor of the concept of immigration reform, but when you start talking about the details of it, of course, that raises all sorts of objections on both sides of the debate. But I just hope we're realistic here. We have a chance to move on 90% of it, and we shouldn't, again, allow the fact that we can't do everything to lead us to do nothing.